Welcome to Let's Talk Writing with Kirsten and Edwina,
coming to you from Madangi country
in Babinda, Far North Queensland, Australia.
In this episode, we're talking about getting started writing. So how do you get started? What about you, Kirsten? How did you get started?
Well, when did I get started? I have always dreamt, like many people, to become a writer. My main barrier was the language barrier. I moved to a country where I didn't speak the language as a native speaker. So I started by writing as an academic. And that was fairly simple to write in an academic voice. I then morphed into a travel writer. And when I started writing the memoir that I am currently in the process of finishing, that is when I started from my journals, because that is where all the pain, the memories, and really the story that I'm trying to tell in that memoir was contained. And I got started by simply writing every day, and that is the advice I give to all of my students. What about you, Edwina?
Yeah, so like you, when I was little, I always wanted to write, but when I went to uni, there were no courses. I ended up doing English literature and got stuck in there, and then life got in the way. But then I got hold of Julia Cameron's wonderful book, The Artist's Way, and that set me off. I'd been journaling regularly from when I was 18, but Julia Cameron's practice of 3 pages, that started and really reminded me. And then I got all of the stories bubbling up out of me from my traumatic past, and they demanded that they be written. And I got into a master's program within the first, I'd been writing full-time for about a year when I got into the master's at UQ, so that sort of catapulted me into the writing world.
So would you recommend people actually do a master's, do a professional or a recognised writing course in order to become writers?
It's not necessary. I think the best craft knowledge that I got was from doing workshops at the Queensland Writers' Centre, workshops with writers who were practising. I learnt a lot about editing in the master's course, and I made a great network of writing buddies, and that's so important. So that's what the courses are really good for, apart from, yes, learning the craft, but connecting with other writers, which is such a rich place. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't actually do an MA in creative writing. I guess I was self-taught. I did do a PhD at university teaching literature, the literature of other published authors, and there came a point where I said, look, I want to actually be that author who doesn't write about other authors but who writes her own stuff. So I did a number of online courses, and then I did what I wouldn't recommend. I started my own online writing community, and I reinvented myself as a teacher of creative writing, and that is really what taught me how to write, because in order to teach my students how to structure a story, how to get started writing, how to keep your readers engaged, that really led me to a treasure trove of a world that I didn't actually know existed there before when I was writing my PhD. So I think formal training can be good, but I think, like you said, having that community of writers, having that network, that is really what you want to look for, when you start writing, and also when you're an accomplished writer, because they're your peers, they're your mates, they're the people that you share your writing with.
And that's really where I've learnt the most about writing, is in my small writers group, which I think at the biggest have been about 5, but exchanging work with other writers, reading and critiquing other writers, talking about the writing and improving it by receiving others' feedback, so there's rewriting, but also by editing them, you learn to see the faults in your own work, and having that community to cheer you on, because you need the sensitivity of a saint, but the height of a rhino to be a writer, because there's so much rejection involved as well.
And also because it takes so long, you really need to. For me, really what is key, or what was key, it was to discover that it is like anything. You need routine. Like any job, in order to be good at it, you really need a routine. And, we have this romantic idea of, one day I'll be inspired and I'll just write this beautiful masterpiece. doesn't work that way, does it?
Yes. Inspiration comes when you're already at the desk, when you're already writing. That's the secret. And yes, that's something I think that we've both learned through yoga, is that discipline of a daily practice, and that leads into everything else. But certainly when you're on a roll and you're just getting started, try and write at least 5 days a week, and at a regular time too. And then your inspiration or your muse or whatever you like to call it will know that you're there ready, waiting, and might come and tap you on the shoulder.
Yes, I used to teach languages at university, and I always gave the students the advice: make a time in your day where you practice, your, well, in that case, language, but the same instructions apply to any writer. Make a time in your day where you say, "This is my writing time." Tell your kids, your husband, your family, your friends. Don't bother ringing between, 10 and 12 in the morning or whenever it is, but just commit to that. Just like, if you, like you mentioned the example of yoga, if you go to a yoga class, it is at 5 p.m. on a Monday and you have to show up. And so the same with your writing. Make it a routine, and also don't worry on the days when you don't feel inspired, when the writing feels really terrible and sounds terrible. It's okay. That's how you get better, by getting through those blocks.
And I've found too, sometimes on those days where it feels like it's dragging and it's revolting and it's horrible writing, not the works of heartbreaking genius that usually pour from you, but it's those days, actually, the writing's not that bad when you go back and look at it. And I was going to say too, it's very important to read good quality books. So not just books on writing, though. There's so many out there, and you will learn something from all of them, even the bad ones. But read good quality books. Read the type of books you want to write. So if you want to write romances, Mills and Boon, read a lot of them. Get a handle on it. If you want to write sci-fi, read sci-fi. If you want to write literary fiction, read good quality literary fiction. But make sure you're choosing really good examples of that, people who know how to write good sentences. That's really, once you know how to write a good sentence, you can write whatever you like. So, do attend some courses on how to just hone your craft. Yeah.
Yes, and I think with the example of, I think it's extremely important to read. I can't stress that enough. And read widely. So if you're writing memoir, read books that are outside of your genre. I, for example, learned a lot from reading Dan Brown, just because of the timing. And this is the thing, I guess we've just spoiled your reading experience, because reading will never be the same again. Because when you read as a writer, you're actually... Well, you should look out for, how did this engage me? How did I not, lose interest in that scene? And how does this writer manage to go and do a time hop from, we're in this year and suddenly we're in this year, the next year, or 10 years down the track? So, yes, the reading well-written books, that is key, definitely.
Yes, definitely. So... what's your best advice to people just starting out? Have you got any?
Yeah, of course. I've got so much advice, I guess. So my best advice is believe in yourself. You are a writer. To be a writer, you can call yourself a writer even if you haven't published a masterpiece, because just the act of writing makes you a writer. Write all the time, so don't get discouraged. Don't feed into that negative self-narrative. Don't allow that inner critic to take over and tell you, you're not really a writer. That imposter syndrome. A lot of us suffer from imposter syndrome. Don't allow that to even come along. Some people mention the vomit draft. Write, the first draft can be that vomit draft, that shitty first draft. Write it, because once you have something written in your journal or on your computer, you can work with that. But if you have nothing, then you might just get discouraged and say, well, maybe it wasn't meant to be, or maybe not today. And procrastination is a big issue with writers. I can talk from experience. So yes, writing every day say, thing I like to say is it's not what you write, it is how much and how often you write that will make you a good writer. What about you, Edwina?
Yes, journaling. That's how writers find their voice. We'll just finish today with a quick writing prompt. So one of my favourites is write about a changing day in your life. So you can do that as straight memoir, or you can fictionalise it. You give that moment to somebody you've just made up. Find a picture in a magazine of somebody, think about who they might be, and then give them that really hard day in your life or that really great day in your life. But just start writing, and often starting from your own life is the easiest place to start.
Yes, and don't be afraid to just free write. So when you write that first draft, write from the heart, don't write from the head, don't write from the editing mind, and just let it flow. And that sort of free writing is a really good way to actually explore, to excavate what is there inside of you, the stories you're holding, the stories that need to be told. And they often come out in the journals when you free write.
Yes.
And then you can take that story idea further and shape it and so on.
I suppose that just keep going forward, don't look back.
That's it.
Yes. Thanks for listening to Let's Talk Writing with Kirsten and Edwina.
And here are our links. Please follow us and leave comments. Happy writing.